My name is Gabriel Croft, and for 31 years I worked as a chief underground surveyor and structural stability engineer for the Dominion Mining and Extraction Company, stationed at the Blackwood Basin Deep Vein Anthracite facility in northern Pennsylvania. If you have never worked in a deep anthracite mine, it is unlike any other workplace on Earth. Blackwood Shaft Number 9 was the deepest coal operation in North America, plunging 4,200 feet vertically into the ancient Precambrian granite below the Appalachian Plateau. Down at those depths, you are no longer operating in the modern world. You are working inside the Earth's ancient, frozen bones. The temperature at the 4,000-foot level remains a stifling, humid 88 degrees year-round. The air is so thick with crushed rock dust and coal damp that every breath feels heavy, tasting of sulfur, old iron, and wet shale. The pressure against your eardrums is constant, a dull, aching throb that never quite goes away until you return to the surface. It is an environment of absolute, unrelenting dark, a blackness so thick and heavy that if your miner's cap lamp fails, you can hold your hand an inch from your eyes and see nothing at all. You hear only the massive, shifting weight of the mountain above your head, groaning and creaking as the wooden timbers and steel arches fight to keep 4,000 feet of solid rock from collapsing into the void. My job was not swinging a pick or operating the continuous coal cutters. I was responsible for the structural mapping of the deep seams, checking the load-bearing pillars, inspecting the high-pressure drainage sumps, and ensuring that our deep exploratory drifts didn't punch into unmapped gas pockets or subterranean water vaults. It was lonely, painstaking work that required me to walk miles of abandoned, unlit gangways, far beyond the active coal faces. I liked the solitary nature of the job. I respected the mountain, I understood the geology, and I trusted the heavy timbering that kept the earth in place. I believed that every danger down in the deep vein had a rational, engineering explanation. Everything I am about to tell you took place during the late autumn of 1991, during the second week of November. The Blackwood facility had begun driving a new experimental haulage drift, Drift 14, west, aimed at tapping a massive, virgin seam of high-grade anthracite sitting 500 feet below our lowest active working level. It was an ambitious, dangerous drill, cutting deeper into the underlying basement granite than any commercial mining operation had ever attempted in the state. On a cold Thursday evening, right around 7 o'clock, the afternoon shift crew operating the heavy hydraulic header machine in Drift 14 west hit something unexpected. The 3-inch diamond-tipped, exploratory drill bit, extending 40 feet ahead of the main cutter face, suddenly lost all resistance and dropped 12 feet into an open void. It wasn't a coal seam, and it wasn't a subterranean water pocket. The pressure sensors on the drilling rig registered a sudden, massive surge of warm, compressed air blowing out of the bore hole, followed by a complete loss of telemetry from the seismic monitoring gear embedded in the drift walls. 10 minutes later, the crew chief in Drift 14 West called the surface office on the hardwired magnet phone. His voice was frantic, trembling so badly through the speaker that the shift dispatcher could barely understand him. He reported that the drilling machine had broken into an unmapped subterranean chamber and that a foul, warm vapor was venting out of the hole, a gas that smelled of raw copper, wet river mud, and spoiled lard. Before the dispatcher could ask for further details, the emergency phone line went dead with a loud, metallic crack. The surface superintendent called me at my home 15 minutes later. He asked me to assemble a 2-man inspection team, descend to the 14 west level, check the structural condition of the header face, and find out why the communications line had failed. I picked up my heavy canvas toolkit, my multi-gas analyzer, my brass sampling hammer, and drove straight to the mine yard. My partner for the inspection was Frank McIntyre, a 55-year-old veteran timberman and deep mine rescue specialist who had spent 35 years working the coal faces of western Pennsylvania. Mac was a broad-shouldered, quiet man with white hair, calloused hands, and a complete lack of fear regarding underground work. He had survived 2 mine cave-ins, a gas explosion in 1978, and possessed a calm, methodical mind that made him the most trusted man in the entire facility when things went wrong underground. We stepped into the heavy steel hoist cage at 8:30 p.m., locked the wire mesh safety gates, and signaled the surface hoist engineer to lower us down. The descent into shaft number 9 took nearly 6 minutes. Through the heavy wire mesh of the cage, the yellow beams of our miners' helmet lamps swept across the dark, wet walls of the vertical shaft, glistening with mineral water and old coal dust. The air grew rapidly hotter, thicker, and drier with every 1,000 feet we descended, until the cool November air of the surface felt like a distant dream. When the hoist cage came to a smooth stop at the 4,200-foot level, we stepped out onto the damp wooden planking of the Drift 1-4 West Station. The silence hit us like a physical weight. The active shifts on the upper coal levels had been suspended for the night, meaning there were no haulage trains running, no ventilation fans humming in the immediate gangway, and no coal crushers rattling in the distance. There was only the absolute, suffocating quiet of the deep earth. We walked down the narrow haulage drift, our heavy steel-toed boots making a sharp times crunch, crunch, crunch times against the gravel ballast between the rail ties. The drift was 8 feet high and 12 feet wide, supported every 4 feet by massive 14-inch oak timber sets, bowed slightly under the pressure of the mountain. Every 200 feet, we passed an emergency refuge chamber or an electrical junction box, their green indicator lights glowing faintly in the dark. As we approached the 3,000-foot mark of Drift 1-4 West, the air temperature rose noticeably, reaching over 90 degrees. The air was thick with a dense white steam mist that hung motionless between the timber sets. And beneath the smell of coal dust and warm hydraulic oil, I caught the distinct, sickening odor the drilling crew had reported over the phone. A sweet, foul smell of raw copper, wet river silt, and rancid lard that coated the back of my throat with every breath. "You smell that, Gabriel?" Mac asked, pausing to adjust the cloth dust mask over his mouth and nose. "That isn't coal gas, and it isn't diesel fumes. That smells like stagnant marsh water that's been trapped in a sealed iron boiler for 50 years. We reached the active working face of Drift 1-4 West at 9 o'clock. The massive 20-ton hydraulic header machine sat idling in the center of the drift, its steel cutter head buried in the dark granite wall. The 3 miners who made up the afternoon drilling crew were nowhere to be seen. Their yellow hard hats, heavy leather work gloves, and metal lunch pails were scattered across the gravel floor around the machine, as if they had dropped their gear and fled in absolute panic. In the center of the granite wall, directly above the cutter head, was the 3-inch exploratory borehole. The diamond bit had been retracted, leaving an open iron casing pipe sticking 6 inches out of the rock face. A steady, silent plume of warm white copper vapor was venting out of the casing pipe into the gallery, condensing into greasy droplets on the cold steel of the header machine. I stepped up to the rock face, holding my multi-gas monitor near the mouth of the casing pipe. The digital screen, illuminated green oxygen, was 20%. Methane was 0. Carbon monoxide was 0. Whatever was venting out of the granite void was not an explosive or toxic mining gas. I pulled a steel tape measure from my belt and slid the flexible metal rule 30 feet into the 4-inch pipe. At 28 feet, the tape passed through the granite bedrock and entered open space. I pressed my gloved ear against the cold iron casing pipe, listening intently. I didn't hear dripping water, and I didn't hear shifting rock. I heard a pulse. Every 40 seconds, like clockwork, the air inside the pipe reversed direction, sucking cold gallery air into the hole for 20 seconds with a soft, wet hiss, then blowing out warm, copper-scented vapor for 20 seconds with a sound like a quiet, raspy breath. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Mac, I said, pulling my head back from the iron pipe, my heart giving a strange, uncomfortable flutter against my ribs. Put your ear to this pipe. Tell me if I'm losing my mind. Mac stepped forward, leaning his heavy ear against the steel collar. He listened for 30 seconds, his thick gray eyebrows knitting together in confusion. That's airflow created by surface barometric pressure, he muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. The drill broke into a natural limestone cave system, connected to a surface sinkhole somewhere miles away. There are no limestone formations at 4,000 feet. Mac, I replied quietly. We are 700 feet into solid Precambrian basement granite. There shouldn't be a cave down here. There shouldn't be anything down here. I shined my heavy flashlight around the perimeter of the drilling machine. 5 feet to the left of the header face, half buried under a pile of crushed granite dust and old timber shims, sat an ancient wooden ore car. It wasn't modern steel equipment. It was a heavy oak wagon, fitted with hand-forged iron wheels, the wood blackened and mineralized by decades of damp air. I stepped over the hydraulic hoses, shined my light into the wooden wagon, and stopped dead. The wooden car belonged to an unmapped, illegal exploratory shaft driven through these hills in the 1890s, a mine that had never been documented on any state geological survey. Sitting inside the wagon was a small brass-bound leather satchel, its leather cracked and stiffened by a century of cold dampness. I reached into the wagon, picked up the satchel, and opened the brass clasp. Inside was a small, cloth-bound notebook, the field diary of a 19th century mine foreman named Jeremiah Vance, dated October 1894. I opened the yellowed pages, holding my flashlight beam steady over the faded brown ink handwriting. I stood in that hot, humid drift, 4,000 feet below the surface of the earth, and read the foreman's final entries word for word. The 14th of October, 1894. The deep shaft has crossed the lower granite bed at 4,100 feet. The men are uneasy. The air coming out of the floor seams smells of copper and rancid suet. Old Thomas swears he heard tapping behind the coal seam at noon, not the sound of miners' picks, 3 slow, deliberate strikes against the solid rock. Tink, 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 he says. It is the signal used by trapped men in the Welsh mines. I told him it was timber settling under the mountain weight. The 17th of October, 1894. We hit the void at 3 o'clock today. The iron drill dropped 6 feet into open space. There is no water, but a warm wind blows out of the rock. It breathes, God help us. Every 40 seconds, it draws air in and pushes warm vapor out. Thomas put his brass lantern to the hole. Something inside the dark void reached up through the 4-inch bore. It did not break the steel drill. It crushed the 3-inch solid iron bit flat as a tin coin. And then it spoke. The 18th of October, 1894. It called Thomas by his Christian name through the iron pipe. It spoke in the voice of his daughter, who died of fever in Scranton 3 years ago. It asked him to pull the timber set down so it could enter the drift. Thomas went mad. He took a sledgehammer and tried to smash the casing pipe. When we tried to drag him away, he threw himself into the dark sump pit. We have locked the heavy iron oak door of the drift from the inside. It is standing outside the oak door now. It is tapping its long gray fingers against the wood. Tap, tap, tap. It does not use a shovel or a pick. It uses its claws. We are not coming back to the surface. I close the cloth notebook, my fingers cold and trembling inside my work gloves, a sharp spike of adrenaline shooting through my chest. "Mac," I whispered, turning toward my partner. "We need to get to the hoist cage, right now." Before Mac could answer, the hardwired magnet phone mounted on the timber set 10 feet behind us let out a loud, sudden ring. Clang, clang, clang. The sharp metallic sound echoed through the silent drift like a gunshot. We both jumped, Mac raising his iron lining bar with both hands. The phone line had been cut clean through 20 minutes ago. The heavy copper wire was hanging loose from the ceiling, severed and frayed. Yet the mechanical bells inside the wooden phone box were ringing continuously, driven by an artificial electrical current. Mac stepped slowly toward the phone box, his flashlight beam shaking against the dark wood. He reached out a trembling hand, unhooked the black bakelite receiver, and held it to his ear. Through the heavy static crackling through the receiver, a voice spoke. It was low, clear, and perfectly modulated, speaking with the exact voice, accent, and breathy inflection of my younger brother, David, who had died in a car accident 12 years prior. "Gabriel?" The voice spoke through the earpiece, its tone calm, pleasant, and unhurried. "Gabriel, is that you down in 1-4 West? Why didn't you answer the phone, Gabriel?" I lunged forward, grabbed the phone receiver from Mac's hand, and slammed it back onto the hook. "Don't listen to it," I screamed, my voice cracking with panic. "It isn't David. It isn't a radio line. Get your gear." As I turned back toward the drilling machine, my flashlight beam swept across the dark gravel behind the header frame. Sitting in the shallow drainage ditch near the granite wall was the body of the afternoon shift crew chief. His canvas coveralls were torn to shreds. His chest cavity opened from his collarbone to his belt in a clean surgical line. His rib cage cracked outward like the doors of a cabinet. Every internal organ was gone, removed completely, leaving only a dry, gray cavity lined with white salt crystals and dark, frozen copper grease. "God in heaven," Mac gasped, staggering backward until his spine hit the oak timber set. Then, from inside the 4-inch iron casing pipe stuck in the granite wall, came the sound. Tink, tink, tink. 3 slow, deliberate taps of iron striking steel. The international emergency distress signal. The solid granite wall surrounding the borehole shattered outward with a deafening Times crack, sending a shower of sharp stone fragments exploding across the drift floor. Out from the black void behind the broken granite face, stepping fluidly through the dust cloud, came the thing that had been sealed beneath the mountain. It was nearly 9 feet long, built with a heavy, barrel-shaped torso that resembled a skinless, gray human ribcage, supported by 4 long, jointed limbs that bent at sharp, unnatural angles, like the legs of a blind cave cricket. Its skin was hairless, slick, and pale gray, caked in thick crusts of black coal dust, wet river mud, and trailing strands of white cave mold. It had no eyes, no nose, no ears, just a smooth, gray, featureless skull that tapered into a wide, horizontal slit running from ear to ear. As it stepped into the glare of our miners' lamps, that horizontal slit split open 4 inches wide. Inside was a dark, wet maw lined with 3 rows of long, dark, needle-sharp teeth that fluttered, clicked, and vibrated against each other like the blades of a high-speed shears. And held in its long 6-fingered right hand was the heavy iron drill bit from the 1890s wagon, which it raised and tapped 3 times against the steel frame of the header machine. Tink, tink, tink. It raised its eyeless head toward Mac and me, its needle teeth vibrating rapidly as it let out a sound that tore through the gallery a high, ear-splitting shriek like a steam locomotive whistle blowing at full pressure, mixed with my dead brother's voice calling my name. Gabriel, come down into the void, Gabriel. Get back! Mac roared, stepping between me and the creature, swinging his heavy 6-foot iron lining bar with all his weight straight into the side of the creature's eyeless skull. The heavy iron bar connected with a loud, wet times crack. A thick spray of black, oily fluid exploded out of the wound, stinging my face like boiling battery acid. The creature let out a high-pitched shriek of rage, but it didn't fall. Its long gray arm shot forward, 6-fingered claws clamping tight around Mac's heavy leather jacket, lifting his 200-pound frame off his feet as if he weighed nothing at all. Gabriel, run! Mac screamed, beating his flashlight against the creature's thick gray neck. Get to the hoist! Seal the shaft! Pant. I didn't think. I grabbed a heavy 20-pound steel sledgehammer from the tool rack of the header machine, stepped forward, and drove the steel head straight into the creature's open, needle-filled mouth with every ounce of strength in my body. The sledgehammer shattered its jaw, blowing black fluid and broken needle teeth out the back of its neck. The creature released Mac, dropping him heavily onto the gravel floor, its long limbs thrashing wildly as it reeled backward into the dark drift. I grabbed Mac by his jacket collar, hauled him to his feet, and we sprinted down the 3,000 feet of Drift 14, west toward the vertical hoist shaft, as fast as our boots could carry us.